Hi there, this is Johnny from Veterans for Independence 2.0. Obviously been watching what's been going on over the last couple of weeks really with the general election coming up, and getting a little bit worried about some of the rhetoric that's coming from the Westminster establishment down south, and now basically question the legitimacy of Scotland's voice and a potential progressive alliance. So it's kind of sparked me into putting this together from a kind of military viewpoint, but it affects, I think it affects, everybody's thinking in a sense at least. So in 1805, at the Battle of Trafalgar, Admiral Horatio Nelson said that England expects every man will do his duty. Now, besides the fact that the Union was nearly 100 years old by that point, and evidently the concept of being British had escaped him, as indeed had the fact that there were Scots serving under his command, he did put two words together that were as revealing as they were prescient and revelatory, and sums up the state of the Union until this very day. And those two words were, England expects. But this was oversimplistic. What he really meant was, I, as your on-site representative of the long-established, time immemorial, ruling aristocratic, superior class elite, expects. You see, as an aristocratic governed country, the establishment ruling elite has always defined for the rest of England how England is to be perceived, and indeed what England is to the rest of the world. Now, the general populace of England are of course English by birth, but they are kidding themselves on if they think that they have anything in common other than the country of birth with their privileged Eton and Harrow establishment hierarchy. Many of my English friends, indeed the overwhelming majority of Englishmen, will probably disagree with me, I know, because they've been taught and been conditioned to think otherwise. But he has more in common with the average Scotsman than he does his titled effete elite. Effete is a cracking word to sum up the establishment. I learnt it from Irvin Welsh's Trainspotting many years ago, and it can mean degenerate, over-refined, decadent, exhausted or worn out. You see, the average man and woman across this entire island have always been, and still are, cannon fodder. But cannon fodder in the classic military sense, but throughout history also, and most recently since the 2008 crash, cannon fodder in the socio-economic sense. This is the reality of the hierarchical, class-based society that is this union. However, I would say that the average Englishman still thinks today as Nelson did 210 years ago, believing, like UKIP do today, that England is the Union. Why? Because he allows the press and mainstream media, which are controlled by this effete establishment, to reinforce his own elevated perception of England's place in the world and of what being English is. And it is in this context, the one of the controlling, superiority complex, even pathological effete elite, that the establishment has always expected. Since 1707, the establishment has expected Scotland to provide its sons, husbands and brothers, to fight and kill each other during the Jacobite rebellions, to fight and die at Trafalgar and at Waterloo, but the establishment expects. To suffer Scottish losses twice the rate per head of population during World War I, destroying entire communities forever, but the establishment expects. Only to be repaid in World War II by Winston Churchill, who sacrificed the 51st Highland Division as a political pawn, placing them under French command as an assurance that Britain wasn't deserting them. And so the 51st lost over 1,000 Scottish sons killed and over 4,000 wounded for nothing more than a political gesture, knowing that they would be obliterated because he, Churchill, was evacuating the rest of the British Expeditionary Force just along the coast at Dunkirk. But the establishment expects. And after all our dying, our bleeding, our loss of life, limbs and minds on the battlefields, in continuous, incessant, unremitting conflict campaigns, still the establishment expects. It expects to be a world leader pretend. It expects to sight weapons of mass destruction away from their own country, but next to our largest populous city. To own and control our media. To love and to hate us at will. To drive fear into our homes of our elderly and our children. To undermine us with blatant xenophobia and casual racism. To own our rich, diverse resources and revenues. To secretly move North Sea maritime borders. To call us a dependent, subsidised, mendicant beggar nation. To demand unquestioning loyalty. To vote for the parties it wants us to. To forever bleed but never lead. To deny us our democracy. To just deny us. To just shut up. But still the establishment expects. In politicising our war dead, another establishment figure, General Sir Richard Dannatt, said before the referendum, a tiny minority has no right to decide the future of a nation that so many Scots have fought to defend. Well, I can agree with the first part of his statement, because it's not the common man or woman of the broader populace in England that expects. It is, in Dannatt's own words, a tiny minority that has no right to decide the future of a nation. And that tiny minority, that Eton, Harrow, effete establishment elite, whose privileged path into politics has been paid for them, have no right to decide the future of our sovereign nation of Scotland, nor indeed that of England. To England and the English, we love you. You are our brothers, you are our sisters on this island, and we sincerely wish you nothing more than good luck, health and happiness. But we loathe your ungrateful, petty, spoilt, warmongering political establishment elite. It's been way too emotional and the price far too high. Please expect no more of us.